Hearing bad things makes you appreciate the good. That's why today we're touching a bit on the bad in our fight against climate change, but slapping a super healthy dose of good icing on it. Because there's a lot of really positive things going on that you may or may not know about. That's why we wanted to share what hikers and some of our favorite outdoor brands are doing to make the world and hiking community a better place. I'm one of your hosts, Yeti Legs, and you're listening to the Yeti Walks into Base Camp Talking Through Hiking podcast, a show for hikers, backpackers, thru hikers, tree huggers, and anyone else who just loves to walk outside. We're a hiking podcast with a goal to make the outdoors more accessible for all of you by telling stories, sharing information, and having folks on the show that offer advice, gear, and peace of mind. We also like to talk about environmental topics and what's happening on our planet. Knowledge is power, and as lovers of the great outdoors, we want all of us to feel a bit more empowered. So let's wrap up our chat on climate change today. Here's some good in the fight to make Mother Nature that much better and empower ourselves. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy. All right, so I've said all this bad stuff. I'm going to say a little bit more bad whenever I talk about what's being done to combat global warming and climate change. I don't like to use those words interchangeably. I like to say them together because they're two separate things. But if I wanted to get away with one term, I could say global warming. So what's being done? First of all, countries around the world are trying to lower greenhouse gas emissions to slow global warming. In 2015, nearly 200 countries signed the Paris Agreement at a United Nations climate change conference. The international treaty tasks each country with lowering greenhouse gas emissions. The goal is to slow the pace of global warming and prevent Earth's temperature from rising 2 degrees centigrade or 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit, again, that's global, above pre-industrial temperatures, according to National Geographic. So, 200 countries, 2015, signed the Paris Agreement. We were one of them. Unfortunately, on January 27th, 2026, the United States has exited the Paris Agreement. This is the second time that President Trump has exited the agreement. The first time was in his first presidency in 2020. After that, Joe Biden re-entered the United States during his one-term presidency in 2021, according to Congress.gov and Earth.org. Other things being done by the current administration to set us back from our climate change progress include, and this is sourced from Earth.org and an article by Martina Gina. So each of these has a number. So it's kind of like a big header and a few things underneath it. I'm going to paraphrase a lot of this so it's not super long and super heady. But the first one is unleashing fossil fuels. That's one of the things that we're doing to basically reverse our progress towards fighting against global warming in the United States. So we're unleashing fossil fuels. You know, President Trump's famous drill baby drill comment, removal of incentives for e-vehicles, opposition of renewable energy resources. They're also lowering accountability for polluters. The biggest one to note here is neutering the EPA, particularly as it relates to air and water quality. So that doesn't only affect the environment, that affects people and their kids. So that's a huge issue. They're also suppressing climate research, particularly by firing large swaths of staff from USAID or USAID, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, the National Science Foundation, the USFS or Forest Service, and NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They're also retreating from the international stage. I already mentioned it earlier, but leaving the Paris Agreement. In January 2026, the administration stated it would be leaving 66 international bodies, including the IPCC. That's that Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, the world's most authoritative scientific body on climate change, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, and I could keep going on because it's a very long, heady list. But I have links for all of my sources in the show notes in case you want to dig a little bit deeper beyond just what I'm saying here in this podcast episode. They're also dismantling environmental justice programs, prioritizing economic deregulation over investments aimed at addressing pollution and inequality in underserved communities. That's really fancy jargon for saying sticking environmentally hazardous plants, factories in areas with underserved people. So we're talking minorities, we're talking poor, blue collar individuals who are living paycheck to paycheck in our country and just trying to get by. But they're there paying taxes and they're working and trying to live a life. And it's not fair that they get stuck in these areas that are detrimental to their health. They're also rolling back animal and nature protections. The Trump administration moved to roll back key protections under the Endangered Species Act, or ESA, which has safeguarded plants and animals since the 1970s, 1973 to be specific, and it's credited with preventing the extinction of hundreds of species. One significant change was the elimination of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's blanket rule, which automatically provided protections for species listed as threatened. The law has been credited with preventing the extinction of hundreds of species. Kind of alluding back earlier to how I was saying that global warming is creating a homogenization of species. So we're going to see a lot more of the same type of species, those that are more generalist and more adapted to live in a wider variety of different types of ecosystems or in different niches. Okay, so that was super heavy. I know, I understand. It hurts my heart to say these things. So I want to end on kind of a good note. And then what you can do as an individual, as a hiker, as a tree hugger, if you don't already know. And it's super easy stuff that you can do in your day-to-day life. So some good news. There are organizations such as the Nature Conservancy, the National Wildlife Federation, Polar Bears International, the Wilderness Society, Oceana, the Ocean Conservancy, the Climate Reality Project founded by Al Gore, POW, or Protect Our Winters, and so many other entities and educational institutions out there participating not only in research, but also positive change. They're litigating moves to take back the fight on climate change. Just follow a few of these organizations on Instagram or their websites, and you can see what they're doing. In fact, something that happened pretty recently, I believe that the courts actually reversed President Trump's cuts to the ESA, or the Endangered Species Act, according to the Society of Environmental Journalists, National Parks Traveler, and Earth Justice. This ruling is expected to derail continued attacks on the ESA, which is heralded as a monumental tool in protecting species. I'm thrilled the court rejected these efforts to gut endangered species protections and eviscerate a law Americans love, said Ryan Shannon, a senior attorney of the Center of Biological Diversity. We're in an extinction crisis that demands urgent action to prevent thousands of animal and plant species from disappearing forever. But thankfully, the law protects these critters and the places they live, according to Earth Justice. And I mean, honestly, I can't imagine that most anyone working in fields pertaining to conservation, wildlife, restoration, outdoor education, and even outdoor recreation would wish harm on our natural environment. So when you start to feel a bit bogged down, like is what happens to me a lot, by all the negativity, just know that there is an army of human beings out there just as passionate about protecting our planet as you are.
Hi, my name doesn't matter, but something that I like to do is I keep a little roll of doggy poop bags in my backpack. That way, whenever I'm hiking or walking around, if I see some trash, especially like the nasty stuff that most people just walk over and ignore because they don't want to touch, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But, if you got a little doggy poop bag, you can pick up anything, tie it off, throw it in your bag, and make the trail cleaner for the next person. And what I've found is that whenever I'm doing this with other people, a lot of times they start picking up trash too. And I don't know. I think bad things are contagious, but good things are contagious too. And, we don't have to virtue signal that we're making the world a better place. We can just do it, and then people will naturally see it and want to participate. I like outside, and I like it when it's clean, and I think that other people do too.
Hi, my name is Wesley Tills, also known as Megaman. I'm a long-distance backpacker, an archaeologist, living out currently in the Great Basin, and I'm trying to use my long-distance backpacking to try to help protect the wilderness. So I go off and planning on doing this big hike from the Atlantic to the Pacific and broadcasting it to as big of an audience, which should warrant some form of monetary value, and then all that monetary value goes to conservation organizations. So it's my way of using my skills as a long-distance backpacker to try to protect the wild. Also, with archaeology, we can, if I find a bunch of cool stuff out here, we can help protect the wilderness from oil companies and mining companies and things like that. So, just doing what I can to help protect the wild for future generations and for the wild critters out there to have a home.
Hey everyone, this is Joy with RecPak. We're an ultra lightweight meal. You just add water, shake, and drink. Built for backpackers through hikers and adventurers who need real fuel in wild places. From the beginning, we've wanted RecPak's mission to align with the people and landscapes we served, and conservation is really important. Without protecting the wild places that our adventurers and consumers rely on, we simply wouldn't exist. That's why we're proud members of 1% for the Planet and Conservation Alliance. This spring, I'll be traveling to Washington, D.C. to speak to our senators about why protecting wild places matter and ensure that these landscapes stay wild so people can explore them, push big days, and fuel those adventures with RecPak.
My name is Katie Oates Houston, and I'm the Community Director for Sawyer Products. The same products you're using to keep fighting bugs at bay and clean water on trail make a huge difference in the lives of people all over the world. Not only do water filters installed in communities last over a decade of daily use, but they empower locals to take their health, opportunity, and solutions into their own hands, literally. The best part is that Sawyer puts their money where their mouth is. Over 90% of profits are donated to advance our mission of clean water globally. When my home state of North Carolina was hit by Hurricane Helene in 2024 and municipal water systems were contaminated for over a month, Sawyer donated over 24,000 filtration systems to the region to ensure clean water for everybody. I also received some pretty special stories from campers who already owned Sawyers, helping out their neighbors in need at the time. All this to say, thanks for choosing Sawyer, and we're proud to be your clean water companion.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ken Posner, also known as Barefoot Ken. And Wesley and Marie asked me, what am I doing to make the world a better place? And the answer is not enough, but I'm trying. So here's a couple of things I do. I'm board chair actually for a couple of not-for-profit organizations. One is the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference. We have about 2,000 volunteers who maintain almost all of the public hiking trails in the Hudson Valley. So that's an important organization. I'm also board chair for a group called Run Wild, and we consist of about 5 or 6 race directors. We pool the revenues from our events, and we use that for land conservation and stewardship. We've raised and contributed almost $500,000 so far, and we hope to do more. So that's a couple of things I do, but I'll tell you something else. I was just up Slide Mountain. I took a friend up there this morning, and on the way down, I collected, a small pocketful of little pieces of wrappers and some bottle caps. And I was actually out on Frenchman Mountain a few weeks ago outside Las Vegas, and I must have come back with a dozen empty water bottles, which I crinkled up, and I was stuffing them in my pack and in my cargo pockets. So we can all do little things to help make the world a better place, and that all adds up. So I love our forests and our mountains and my hiking and running friends, and so I am looking for more ways to give back. Have a great time out there.
And so I wanted to close with a few things that you can do yourself. And these are kind of a shotgun selection here on things that you can do to prevent your contribution to greenhouse gases, to make nature cleaner or safer for wildlife, or just all around to be a good person. The first and most important thing that you can do is educate yourself on what's happening. Knowledge is power. So if you're listening to this podcast and you got this far, you're educating yourself, and thank you for listening and putting in the time and effort to learn more about conservation and what's happening in our world. You can volunteer for a local nonprofit or other agency that participates in trail work, cleanup projects, restoration, and so on. You can plan your trips well and know before heading out. Don't use campfires unless there are no fire bans, and use them only in designated areas. So I'm talking metal fire rings, please. Don't build your own fire pit below a 200-year-old spruce because that sucker might catch. Purchase items with little or no packaging where you can, and that looks like shopping on the outside of the grocery store and not the middle. Recycle. Turn off lights when you're not using them. Use public transportation, or maybe even get an e-vehicle if you can afford it. Go for a walk outside, because when you fall in love with nature, and I'm sure you will, even if you don't love being outside, you'll want to do what you can to protect it more. Spread the word, spread the love. And lastly, vote. Your vote may be the most powerful thing that you can do to prevent the assault on our public lands. All right, Charlotte, that's all I've got. Do you have any questions?
I wrote a couple of questions down. With the greenhouse gases, like being up in the atmosphere, why don't they just go out into space? Like, why do they stay in the atmosphere? Is that because of like gravity, or, why don't they just like float out?
That's a really great question. To put it quite simply, Charlotte was right. Gravity is the reason that greenhouse gases do not leave our atmosphere. Greenhouse gases, or GHG molecules, tend to have more mass than other gases that naturally make up our atmosphere, and so therefore they're captured in our atmosphere. That is according to earthscience.com.
This is me with like very little scientific background, I guess. Are we able to like take out ocean water, filter it, and drink it?
We are actually, and the process is called desalination, and there are people that do it. The war in Iran, one of the big threats that our nation made on Iran is you don't open up the Strait of Hormuz and we're going to blow up your plants, which provide drinking water for people. And so, yeah, it's definitely something that we're able to do.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were talking about, icebergs and snow melting and, having that mass of water, spreading into the ocean, basically. My initial thought was, oh, that's a loss of drinking water, potential drinking water.
Even with the ocean, the ocean experiences evaporation, and that does get up in the atmosphere and it rains back down. So the water cycle is a cycle, but our fresh water is becoming less of a renewable resource as this is all happening and temperatures rise. It's also important to note the rapid growth of industrial activities, including desalination, is resulting in high energy consumption and carbon emissions that impact the environment, for example, by causing global warming. Desalination technologies have been shown to require considerable amounts of energy and generate greenhouse gas emissions. However, the use of environmentally friendly desalination technologies can minimize those environmental issues. And that is according to a paper from Elsevier titled Desalination Technologies and Their Environmental Impacts, a review by Al-Masudi and Jamusi.
That also makes me wonder, with like all of the like AI data centers, like, and you don't want to like overdraw water from the ocean because obviously there's a whole ecosystem there. Like I would think because, like with AI data centers, there's, they use up so much water. Are they not able to use like ocean water for that or do the desalination process for those kind of things?
Right now they're using fresh water to cool their data centers. What is first off, is that all your questions? I don't want to cut you off.
I guess I technically had like another question about like you were talking about the Earth's paleoclimate record, that the average has been higher in the past. Like obviously we're not exceeding like our Earth's highest records ever. Not to say that's not not to say we're not in a bad spot because, it's more rapid. But do you know how it cools off after that? Is it though you had mentioned, I think in that last episode about different things with the sun that can cause, heating and cooling.
Different tilting and stuff like that of the planet.
Yeah. So I was just curious, I guess, if it goes from like the hottest, can you, I guess, like talk a bit more about that?
There are different theories on how the planet's gone through glacial and interglacial periods or like these warming periods. Some of these have to do with plant life. Some of these have to do with volcanic activity. Yeah, I'm not an expert in this, so I don't want to keep saying stuff and say something wrong here. To explain this a bit better, I went to an article from NOAA. Over at least the past million years, glacial and interglacial cycles have been triggered by variations in how much sunlight reaches the northern hemisphere in the summer, which are driven by small variations in the geometry of Earth's axis, so how it's tilted, and its orbit around the sun. But these fluctuations in sunlight aren't enough on their own to bring about full-blown ice ages and interglacial periods. They trigger several feedback loops that amplify the original warming or cooling. During an interglacial, you'll see these four things. Sea ice and snow retreat, reducing the amount of sunlight the Earth reflects. Warming increases atmospheric water vapor, which is a powerful greenhouse gas. Permafrost thaws and decomposes, releasing more methane and carbon dioxide. And the ocean warms and releases dissolved carbon dioxide, which traps even more heat. These feedbacks amplify the initial warming until the Earth's orbit goes through a phase during which the amount of northern hemisphere's summer sunlight is minimized. Then these feedbacks operate in reverse, reinforcing the cooling trend. Here's a question for you. Yeah, like what's your understanding of all this between the last episode and this one? Like of course you don't have time to get into specifics, but what's your like 30-second soapbox talk?
Yeah, probably something like, since like the Industrial Revolution, the effects that humans have had on the environment and the climate have been like exponential to what the Earth has seen in the past. And it's caused, significant weather changes and climate changes, and all of the things that we're releasing into the atmosphere have just like detrimental effects that we're not going to see. And we will see them in our lifetime, but they will live us, like our children, our children's children, and hopefully maybe their children, if they're able to, will still see those same effects. And, trying to limit what we can and take the steps that we can now to try to reverse some of it. Obviously it's hard when you're looking at, it's such a massive scale, and like you said, like compounding effect. It's hard to pull yourself like out of the like scary spiral of it and think about those little steps that you can take that will make a difference. But I mean, it's important to do that.
The reason that I listed all those little things that you can do, and I don't even know if I said this, but this is like my slogan: pick up some trash, pick up a piece of trash that's not yours. And that piece of trash isn't directly going to impact, global warming. But what it is it starts a trend towards a habit, and a habit becomes a mindset and a lifestyle. And if you develop a lifestyle of being conscientious of your impact on the planet, even if it's just in your yard or on like your little footpath that you like to hike with Zion, and if you're aware of that, then you'll be aware of bigger and more things as time progresses.
Yeah, I feel like too. And then you tell other people about, things that you've found while you're doing those cleanups, or other people see you doing it. And then it maybe like kickstart something in their brain and hopefully turns into a trickle effect like that.
Yeah. I've had people start cleaning up whenever they saw me cleaning up, which is crazy. And then I had people ask me if I was doing community service, and they were like looking for an ankle monitor. Who knows? But yeah, I think it's a really big, broad topic to cover. And I'm sorry for going on for as long as I have about this. I hope it made sense. And I hope that you are that much more informed about climate change and all this stuff and what's happening, even domestically right now.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, and definitely one you can get stuck in, and, but it's important to talk about. So
it is. Well, thanks, Charlotte, for being on the episode, for sitting through my lecture today.
Thank you. Thank you for answering all my questions.
Yeah. And also thanks to the Fire Once Lost for always letting us use your epic track Appalachian Trail for intro and outro music. Thanks, Anders. We love you, man. If you want to hear any specific Environmental Corner topics discussed, I'll try and keep them more concise if it's helpful. You can shoot us an email at yetiwalksintobasecamp@gmail.com. Also follow us on our Patreon. It is free. You can stay up to date whenever we release new episodes. You'll get a little email about it. And whenever we release pictures or other fun things, you'll get that too. But, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, our listeners, and the awesome brands that continue to support us. So we just wanted to give a huge thanks to all of you. Thanks for doing your part and trying to educate yourself and make the place that you have grown up and lived in, our planet, that much better, one day, one step at a time. Whatever trail you're out there hiking, it doesn't matter what trail it is, the PCT, CDT, or if it's just your little footpath in the backyard. Because at the end of the day, we're all just outside walking. Hey everyone, Yeti Legs here. We just wanted to let you know that here at Yeti Walks into Base Camp, we do not use AI for any of our editing, recording, social media, or image generation. Everything is done by hand by our team, and that's how we want it to stay. The use of AI has detrimental effects on our environment, and we want no part of it. So we hope you enjoyed this episode that was hand edited by our team with talent and integrity.